Something inside them cracked the moment they felt you stop pursuing them. That is why this message found you tonight. It is not random, and it is not here by accident. Something has changed, and the real shift did not begin in them. It began in you. Your energy is not the same anymore, and they feel that difference more often than you realize. What lives in their heart for you is not simple attachment, not convenience, not routine, and not a passing emotional comfort. It is love, real love, the kind that ignores logic, resists timing, and refuses to disappear just because someone tried to walk away from it. They believed distance would weaken it. They assumed silence would bury it, but it did not. What existed between you was never something you invented out of pain or loneliness. It was real then, and it remains real now. This bond was placed in your life with purpose. Some connections do not arrive by chance. They arrive to transform you, to wake something up in you, and to show both people something deeper than they were ready to admit. The moment you stopped reaching, stopped checking, stopped pouring yourself outward, everything changed. You became quieter inside. You pulled your energy back home to yourself, and they felt that immediately. It was like a room suddenly losing its warmth, like a soft but unmistakable closing of a door they thought would stay open forever. Put your hand on your chest for a moment and feel the warmth there. That steady feeling inside you is real, and it is the same kind of feeling that rises in them whenever something brings you to mind. And that happens more often than they would ever confess. You were never too intense, never too emotional, never too much to handle. The truth is much simpler and much harder for them to face. You were the most genuine thing they had ever stood in front of, and they did not know how to receive something that honest. Every time you reached toward them and they stepped back, it was seen. Every time you chose tenderness instead of bitterness, that was seen too. Every quiet morning when you carried confusion with grace, every long night when you sat with a pain you could not explain, none of that went unnoticed. You were never invisible in this story. You were witnessed the whole time, and there is something unfolding now behind the silence you have been holding. Something they have not said, something they may not even know how to say yet, but it is happening, whether they admit it or not. There is a truth beneath their silence that looks very different from what you may have assumed. On the surface, it may seem like distance, pride, or emotional withdrawal. But under all of that, something more complicated has been building. They are reacting to the loss of access, to the shift in your energy, to the feeling that you are no longer orbiting around them the way you once did. That change has unsettled them. If this is your first time here, welcome to Healing Minds. Stay with me through this, and if this message speaks to something you have lived through, subscribe and turn on notifications so you do not miss what comes next. What they feel is not confusion. It is not mixed signals in the shallow sense. It is deeper than that. Admiration does not steal sleep. Habit does not make someone freeze when they see your name. Love does. Love that has nowhere safe to go starts acting in strange ways. It hides itself. It avoids direct language. It tests instead of speaking plainly. That is what has been happening here. They noticed the change in you before they could properly explain it to themselves. You may have still replied. You may have still been polite, warm, and mature. But the energy had changed. You were no longer standing there hoping, waiting, leaning in emotionally for scraps of reassurance. You were still kind, but you were no longer chasing, and that difference hit them instantly. Their body noticed it before their mind could create a story around it. Instead of responding honestly and saying what they felt, they did what fearful people often do when emotion becomes too real. They started testing the connection, measuring whether they still had access, checking whether you would still react in the same way. And while all of that has been happening, they have been trying to maintain control over themselves. During the day, they distract themselves, they keep moving, they tell themselves they are fine, they act as though they have moved on or made peace with everything. But sleep has a way of exposing what the ego tries to hide. In their dreams, you return again and again. You appear in places that feel familiar and unreal at the same time. You sit across from them. You laugh. You speak. You look at them with calm instead of pain, with presence instead of need. And that is what shakes them the most. In those dreams, you are not reaching for them. You are not begging to be chosen. You are simply whole. You are there, complete within yourself, and that wholeness unsettles them more than any accusation ever could. When they wake, there is a small moment before reality settles back in. For a few seconds, the distance disappears. For a few seconds, all they feel is closeness, warmth, and the echo of your presence. Then reality returns. The silence comes back. The space between you becomes real again, and they are left lying there with a feeling pressing against their chest that they do not know how to explain. Their body has been telling them the truth for a long time. Their throat tightens when something reminds them of you. Their stomach drops when they realize how long your silence has lasted. Their chest warms unexpectedly when a song plays that you would have sent them, or when they pass something that carries your energy. Their breathing changes. Their hands hesitate. Their face may stay neutral, but their body always reacts first. Even in small moments, they reveal more than they mean to. When your name comes up in conversation, their attention shifts before they can control it. Their eyes move. Something alert wakes up inside them and then quickly tries to hide again. That is the strange thing about the body. It tells the truth long before the mind is ready to admit it. And their body has not been quiet about you. Not really. It has been signaling what they feel over and over, even while they try to act normal, distant, or unaffected. They watch more than they let on. They check your profile. They revisit what you post. They notice the time you are active. They study the details more closely than they would ever confess. They see that you are still living your life. They see your smile. They see signs that your world is still moving, and it unnerves them that it is moving without them at the center of it. That is where the panic begins. Not always dramatic panic on the outside, but the quieter kind that rises when someone realizes the emotional position they thought they held is no longer guaranteed. They thought your attention would remain available. They thought your warmth would still be there when they reached for it indirectly. But now they are discovering something different. You are no longer standing in the same place emotionally. You are no longer waiting in the same way. And that shift forces them to confront what they really feel. It forces them to face the possibility that what they walked away from was not ordinary. It was not replaceable. It was not something they could pause and return to whenever they were ready. Some part of them now understands that they may have mishandled something rare. And that realization is beginning to break through the walls they built. They set the phone down, then pick it right back up. They look again. They check whether you viewed their story. They post things they know might cross your screen. Then they wait. They look once more. They see that you watched it, and they also see that you gave them nothing back. No reaction, no signal, no invitation, just silence and composure. And that affects them more than they expected. They type your name, then erase it. They start a message, then stop midway. They close the app, reopen it, and try again. This time, they write something light, something vague, something that can be read as harmless if it needs to be. But underneath it, they are hoping for something much deeper. They are not waiting for words alone. They are waiting for a feeling, for some trace of the old warmth, for the version of you that once moved toward them so easily. The moment your energy changed, they felt it. There was no missing it. And what that shift stirred in them has been heavier than they let anyone see. What they feel is not random fixation, and it is not attachment to some fantasy they invented. It is love tied to something very real they recognized in you, something rare, something they have not been able to replace or reason away. They saw something in you that settled into them deeply, and now they cannot simply remove it because it became inconvenient. They have tried to outrun it. They have tried to bury it under routine, distraction, and denial. But every morning it is still there when they open their eyes. Place your fingers on your wrist and feel your pulse for a second. That steady rhythm kept going through every silent day, every unanswered thought, every moment you questioned whether any of this meant what you felt it meant. What lives between you did not disappear just because words stopped. The connection remains, even in silence, even in distance, even after all the confusion. Some bonds seem to live deeper than logic can explain. They stay present beneath the surface, waiting, watching, refusing to vanish just because two people stopped naming them. While you were trying to understand the silence, they were also carrying something they could not say. They lie awake with thoughts of you they would never speak out loud. They replay moments, they revisit conversations, they sit with truths that grow louder in the dark. And that is why this matters now. You are finally in a place where you can see their testing for what it really is. Not confidence, not indifference, not control. It is fear. It is someone trying to reach without admitting they are reaching. It is someone trying to feel whether the bond still lives without risking the full honesty of saying so. If they could speak without pride, without defenses, without the walls they have spent so much time building, this is the truth that would probably come out. They would tell you they noticed the exact moment you changed. They would admit they were not prepared for it. They had become used to your presence, used to your warmth, used to the quiet certainty that if they extended a hand, you would still be there on the other side. They did not realize how much they depended on that until it was no longer guaranteed. And when that changed, everything they had been keeping buried started making noise inside them. But instead of speaking honestly, they did what they have always done when something feels too vulnerable. They tested the connection. They looked for proof without asking for it directly. They searched for reassurance in your reactions because they did not know how to ask for it openly. They know that was unfair. At some level, they understand it. But fear makes people do strange things when they are terrified of losing something important. They wanted to know whether you still cared. They wanted to know if the warmth still lived underneath your quiet. They convinced themselves that if you answered a certain way, if you reacted a certain way, if you chased one more time, then they would have their answer. But beneath all of that is a truth they have not escaped. They think about you every day. This was never part of their plan. They did not intend to still be carrying you like this. They tried to move on. They tried to fill their time, to flood their mind with noise, to replace feeling with activity. None of it changed the fact that your presence stayed with them. You remained there quietly, steadily, in places they could not reach with logic or force. They remember you in ways they rarely admit, even to themselves. They remember how you reached for them with openness. They remember what it felt like to be met by someone sincere. They remember the way you said their name as though it carried real weight. They remember how you listened fully, not just to respond, but to understand. They remember the moments when things felt natural between you, before fear and complication got in the way. They remember the last time things felt easy. They remember your face, your tone, the details of what you wore, what you said, and even the words they should have said back but did not. Their memory of you is fuller than they let on. They have carried more of it than anyone around them would ever guess. They told themselves it was temporary. They told themselves time would erase it. They told themselves you would become a closed chapter. But the truth is, They never really left that chapter. Now your silence has forced them into a place they do not know how to manage. You are no longer filling the space for them. You are no longer making it easier by staying emotionally available in the same old way, so they keep reaching indirectly. They leave little openings, they send something vague, they create opportunities for contact without clearly asking for it. They hope you will walk through those openings on your own so they do not have to risk the full vulnerability of naming what they feel. And each time you stay steady, each time you respond with calm instead of desperation, it affects them in two opposite ways at once. Something in them breaks because they can no longer rely on the old pattern, but something in them also heals because the version of you they are seeing now is the deeper, stronger, more whole version they always sensed was there. Your silence is not emptiness to them, it is revelation. That is why they keep circling the same fear. What if it is too late? What if you have already made your peace? What if the warmth they used to count on is gone now and they are the reason it disappeared? They have no easy way to answer those questions and no safe place to put the weight of them, so they carry it alone. They sit with it quietly, they wonder, they replay, they hesitate. More than anything, they are facing a truth they never prepared for. They were not ready to lose you in silence, not like this, not without a scene, not without a final ending, not without one more chance to understand what was slipping away. And somewhere deep inside, what hurts most is the feeling that they may be losing the one person they were meant to hold on to, and they may have realized it only after your energy finally returned to you. Type "I hear you" in the comments, not for them, but for yourself. Deep down, some part of you has already recognized this truth for a long time. Your heart has been carrying it even when your mind kept doubting it. You were never the problem in this connection. You were never the flaw, the burden, or the reason things became complicated. You were the truth they did not know how to hold without fear. And now you are finally ready to understand what their behavior has really meant. Those little tests were never as casual as they looked. They were never random. They were not empty mind games, just for the sake of control. In their own limited and frightened way, those tests were confessions. Every indirect reach was really them asking whether you were still there, whether your presence still existed for them, whether love still had a door open. That is the part most people miss. They were never testing whether you loved them. They were testing whether it would be safe to show that they still loved you. That changes everything. Someone who truly feels nothing does not hover over a message late at night trying to make it sound casual enough to send. Someone who has genuinely moved on does not stare at your silence as though it holds the answer to everything they have been too afraid to say. Their distance was never proof of the absence of feeling. It was fear dressed in restraint. Beneath that fear, the love never actually went anywhere. What types and deletes at 2 in the morning is not confusion. It is emotion that lost its courage. It is truth with no safe language. And even when human words fail, what is real does not simply disappear because one person became afraid to name it. Hold your own face for a moment and feel your warmth. Let yourself remember who you are. You are no longer the version of yourself that waits endlessly for signs. You are no longer the version that chases clarity from someone who only offered fragments. Something sacred has shifted in you, and they feel it too. You did not imagine this bond. You did not create it in your head. What you felt was real, and what they felt was real too. The connection was real. The love was real. And this story is not only about what they feel, it is about what you became through it. Something in you finally reached a point where waiting no longer felt like love. It started to feel like losing yourself. And at some moment, maybe quietly and without ceremony, something inside you said enough. You stopped. You pulled your energy back into your own life. You used to wake up and check your phone before you were even fully present in your own morning. Your mood could rise or collapse based on one name, one reply, one delay, one silence. You used to replay every conversation like there was a hidden answer buried somewhere in it. You searched for tones beneath words, meanings beneath pauses, clues in things that should never have required that much decoding. You waited for messages, watched for typing bubbles, and shaped your own responses with exhausting caution so you would not seem too invested. You blamed yourself for their distance. You bent around their moods. You reduced your own needs so they would not have to feel discomfort. You poured so much of yourself into the connection and then apologized for needing anything in return. That version of you loved deeply, but it also kept abandoning itself in the process. And one day, that pattern finally broke. You stopped letting your mornings belong to their silence. You stopped treating confusion like something noble to endure. You stopped looking for excuses that could make painful behavior easier to digest. You stopped shrinking your truth into safer words. You stopped reaching with no guarantee of being met. You stopped holding the door open so wide that the draft touched every part of your life. You stopped making yourself smaller so they could feel bigger. And in that stopping, something powerful happened. You became whole again, not because they came back, not because they finally explained themselves, not because the silence ended or the story suddenly turned soft. You became whole because you chose yourself. You chose your peace over the cycle. You chose your own emotional ground. You put your own name back at the center of your life, and that shift has unsettled them more than anything else ever could. That is what frightens them. You did not create a scene. You did not beg louder. You did not punish them. You simply stopped waiting, and somehow that was more powerful than anything they expected. What you carry now is not coldness, revenge, or some performance of detachment. It is a kind of stillness that only comes when someone decides to become complete on their own terms. You no longer need a sign to know your worth. You no longer need their attention to feel real. That kind of calm is deeply magnetic because it cannot be manipulated. It is the version of you they always sensed, but perhaps never believed they would have to face. They can feel that your center no longer belongs to their unpredictability, and that changes the entire emotional balance. A person who once counted on your waiting now has to stand in front of your wholeness instead. So now they start noticing signs everywhere because the feeling has become impossible to ignore. A repeated number catches their attention when they think about reaching out. A song hits at the wrong time, and suddenly you are there in the room with them emotionally. They wake in the middle of the night with your name already present in their mind before they even understand why. They begin attaching meaning to moments because something in them knows this connection never really left. They feel pushed toward honesty, even if they still resist it. Timing in love rarely obeys the ego. It does not rush to satisfy fear, and it does not slow down just because someone is confused. What was set in motion between you has continued moving beneath the surface, regardless of silence, pride, or delay. Even now, in all the quiet, something is still unfolding. Not everything meaningful happens in obvious ways. And here is the paradox they are being forced to face. The moment you stopped reaching was the moment your energy became impossible to ignore. The moment you stopped needing became the moment your presence grew stronger. The moment you became whole, everything shifted. Put your hands on your knees and feel the steadiness there. That calm is yours now. It was always yours, but now you live inside it differently. They have looked in other places, tried other directions, searched for substitutes, distractions, explanations, and escape routes. But nothing carries the same stillness you now hold. Nothing feels like that grounded warmth. And that is because what they recognized in you was never only affection. It was a presence. It was safety, depth, honesty, and emotional truth. Those things cannot be replaced by convenience. They cannot be copied by temporary people. They cannot be recreated on demand once they have been mishandled and lost. You have always carried a light that did not depend on their acknowledgement. It did not dim when they became distant. It did not go out when the tests began. It kept burning. It is still burning now. You were never waiting for permission to matter. You were never waiting for someone else to certify your value. You were always the warmth. You were always the one bringing sincerity, depth, and emotional life into the space between you. And now, finally, you know it. They are beginning to remember it too. Maybe what comes next will be small at first. Maybe it will be a message that tries to sound casual while carrying far more than it admits. Maybe it will be a look, a pause, a moment where the truth sits plainly between you both without needing decoration. Maybe it will come gently and almost invisibly. But whatever comes, you are not the one who needs to chase it anymore. That is the difference now. You are ready, but not in the old way. You are ready without abandoning yourself. You are ready without shrinking. You are ready without giving your power away. Real stillness does not run after what belongs to it. It allows truth to come forward on its own. Feel the warmth along your arm, your hands, your chest. That living warmth is your energy returning to you. It belongs to you first. It always did. And through every difficult moment, every silent evening, every morning you rose without being seen by the world, every time you chose softness when bitterness would have been easier, all of it mattered. None of it was wasted. You were seen in your waiting. You were seen in your reaching. You were seen when you stopped. You were seen when you became someone stronger. You were never too much. Time did not lessen you. It refined you. It made you rarer. So hear this clearly. You are not foolish. You are not desperate. You are not someone who imagined a connection that never existed. You are someone who loved something real and stayed present long enough to discover something even more important inside yourself. What they feel for you is love, but what you have now is peace. Their tests belong to their fear. Their silence belongs to their growth. Their pride belongs to their own journey. But your steadiness belongs to you. Your wholeness belongs to you. Your calm cannot be taken back by a midnight message, an indirect reach, a carefully staged silence, or a delayed confession. You have already become the very thing they were afraid to face. Someone who no longer needs to be chosen in order to know their worth. That is your power now. That is what changed everything. You were complete before this message ever found you. You are simply more aware of it now. This stillness is not somewhere you are trying to get to. It is already in you. You are held by a kind of love that does not begin or end with any one person. It is larger than this story. It has been carrying you through every second, even when you thought you were carrying it alone. So type, "I am ready" in the comments, not because you are ready for them, but because you are ready for the life that no longer pauses itself around someone else's uncertainty. You are ready for a version of yourself that does not wait for tests to end before it begins to live. And if this message found you right when you needed it most, share it with someone who is still running, still waiting, still giving their peace away. They may need the reminder that the moment you stop chasing is often the moment everything truly begins. In the end, this was never only about whether they would return, speak, or finally admit what they feel. It was about what this journey awakened in you. Their silence, their distance, and their testing did not destroy you. They revealed you to yourself. They pushed you toward the moment where you stopped abandoning your own heart just to keep a connection alive. And that is the real turning point. Whether they come forward or stay hidden behind fear, you are no longer the same person who waited for crumbs and called it hope. You have found your center again. You have remembered your own worth. You have learned that real love should never require you to disappear inside it. What is meant for you will meet you in truth, not confusion. What is real will not need endless chasing. And now, instead of standing at the door of their uncertainty, you are standing fully in your own light. That is your power. That is your peace. And that is why everything changes from here.